Hey everyone, Ian from Eurogamer here. Now, you see this game behind me, right? This is Max Mustard, a charming little action platformer game from Toast Interactive that recently released on the PlayStation VR2. But you probably wouldn't know that because Sony has just straight up ignored its existence completely. Do a little search on the PlayStation blog for Max Mustard and you get nothing found. Do the same thing on the PlayStation and PlayStation UK Twitter accounts. Sorry, I'm not calling it anything else. And the results returned are exactly the same. Max Mustard just does not exist in the eyes of Sony. Which is odd really, as not only has Max Mustard reviewed incredibly well on the Quest, but it's also doing something that Sony itself can't be bothered to do. And that's to bring a 3D action platformer in the vein of Mario to the PSVR2. You know, something like, I don't know, an Astrobot maybe? Whether you're a non-helmet head or a massive fan of the PlayStation VR2 like me, it is becoming abundantly clear with every passing moment that Sony just doesn't care about the PSVR2. So with a heavy heart, that just makes me think, why should we, the players, care? Why would anyone even take the massive financial plunge on one of these things at this point, considering Sony's lack of interest in its own product? Despite the fact that I think that this is an absolutely magnificent piece of kit. I really should have learned to not get my hopes up by now, but as a huge fan of Sony's PSVR2, it is hard not to get excited when a rare state of play featuring new PSVR2 games is announced. Now, I'm not naive enough to believe that Half-Life Alyx is ever going to come to the headset, even though I desperately want it to, but when one of my favourite VR games ever is the PSVR1 exclusive Astrobot Rescue Mission, I think that it's fair to say that I, along with every other PSVR fan out there, was bitterly disappointed when Astrobot was announced and then subsequently released on the PS5 without even a whiff of PSVR2 support. And to add extra salt to the wound, there are multiple sections throughout Astrobot on the PlayStation 5 where our plucky little protagonist actually wanders around wearing a VR headset. The only trouble is, it's a PlayStation VR1! Look, I'm sorry for shouting there, but come on! How can Sony and PlayStation expect its fanbase to stay excited about the future of the PlayStation VR2 if its main mascot won't even wear one? I know video games take a long time to produce, but the PSVR2 came out a full year and a half before Astrobot launched in early September, and even then, its developers Team Asobi must have known about the PSVR2's existence before it was announced to the public. You know, what with it being a first-party Sony studio and all. Surely there could have been time to add some PSVR2-themed assets in there before the game's launch, but no, there is nothing. Even Astrobot's spaceship ignores the PSVR2's incredible sense controllers, instead opting to use the PSVR1's clumsy and inaccurate move controllers as its joysticks. I mean, come on, it's no wonder he bloody crashed it. Now, I'm not one of those people who thinks that the PSVR2 has no games, by the way, and I'm absolutely not here to bash it as a product either. I love it, and I know that the PSVR2 has hundreds of games on its store or on the way to the store already. Just listed on Wikipedia are 328 games in total, and there are still plenty on the way. I mean, I've literally done multiple hour-long list videos on this channel in the past about upcoming games for the platform. Plenty of the currently available PSVR2 games are really, really great too, but off the top of my head, I can only count 2 proper first-party PSVR2 releases from Sony since the headset came out. That's Horizon Call of the Mountain and Gran Turismo 7, while the Sony-published Firewall Ultra, a game which launched in a less-than-ideal state, caused its developers, First Contact Entertainment, to completely shut down soon after, citing a lack of VR support from within the industry. Hell, Sony even closed its very own London studios earlier this year, so that's any hope for the London-based Gangster 'em Up Blood and Truth 2 down the apples and pears. I know it sounds like I do, but I really don't like to moan. Honestly, I don't. So I feel like I need to reiterate here that I am a big fan of the PSVR2, and this whine is because I do legitimately care about the headset and VR as a gaming medium in general. I just feel like there's so much wasted potential here, and that grates not just on me, but on other big PSVR2 evangelists too, like PSVR Without Parole here, who is quite rightly, and politely I might add, asking PlayStation for enhanced versions of classic PSVR1 games like Blood and Truth, Farpoint, and of course Astrobot Rescue Mission. I mean, come on, these things seem like a no-brainer to me, and I assume to every other PSVR2 adopter out there too. But at this point, I would bet exactly zero cash on Sony actioning any of those ideas in the future.
I've been waiting for you. A long time.
I'm never going to know what goes on in Sony's boardrooms or what its decision-making processes look like when it comes to promoting its headset or developing first-party games for it. Maybe there's a valid reason why it feels the need to put the PSVR2 on the back burner compared to its other products, but I'm guessing it's purely just a money thing. What's annoying is that it seems like Sony has these genius minds making these phenomenal pieces of tech behind the scenes, while its marketing and software production teams seem to be working in opposition to them. These two hands should be shaking, not slapping each other away. Now, of course, despite how it looks to the average gamers or exasperated PSVR2 fan, it is not true that Sony's marketing teams are ignoring the PSVR2 altogether. The PlayStation blog and Twitter accounts have recently done posts about things like Metal Hellsinger VR and Metro Awakening, to name but a few. But still, the company does seem to sidestep the smaller developers all the time. And to be quite frank here, these are the exact people who are keeping this device on life support. And that brings me back nicely to little Max Mustard here. Max Mustard is basically the only 3D action platformer on the PSVR2 right now, aside from maybe, say, Then VR Adventure and, I don't know, at a stretch, Moss Books 1 and 2 and Mixture. And that means Max is plugging a huge Astrobot-shaped hole, whether its developer likes it or not. Just the other day, in fact, VR superstar Nathy tweeted about the lack of PSVR2 announcements in a reply to a recent update from PlayStation about the upcoming games releasing on its store in October. There was no sign of Max Mustard on PlayStation's list, or any other indie PSVR2 titles that were releasing that month either. And, in response to Nathy's tweet, Max Mustard's developer replied with this: "Preach. We love the PSVR2, as do many other VR devs. Third-party developers deserve far more recognition for their efforts." And you know what? I couldn't agree with them more. Honestly, it's hard not to feel for studios like Toast Interactive here, who are seemingly being ignored by Sony when all they really want to do is sell their excellent games and help improve the platform as a whole by bringing more experiences to it. You know, just all of those things that Sony seemingly doesn't want to do anymore. Now, I'm saying this with love and respect for the platform and for the people who made it, but it is really hard to stay excited about the PlayStation VR2 or even recommend it to new VR adopters at the moment when things like this happen. And as a VR enthusiast, that genuinely hurts to admit. I don't think it's too late to save the PSVR2 yet, but it is certainly on its last legs at this point. And while I've basically given up hope for some big first-party games that make the most out of the PSVR's headset haptics, 4K visuals and eye tracking, the continuing rise in popularity of flat-screen to VR mods over on the PC could be the key to reviving this struggling helmet. Flat2VR Studios, who I spoke to at Gamescom this year about their official Flat2VR port of the brass-blowing, meme-tastic music game Trombone Champ, is a company formed by flat-screen to VR modders who are dedicated to transforming beloved flat games into incredible VR experiences. And on its list of upcoming releases, it already has great games like RoboQuest, Wrath, Aeon of Ruin, and of course Flatout, an old school favourite of mine that I literally cannot wait to try out in VR. Trombone Champ Unflattened is even launching on PSVR2 this year, so you know that this company isn't just focused on PC releases. I've said this in a previous video, but seeing as Sony seemingly doesn't want to develop new PSVR2 games, the least it could do is allow teams like Flat2VR Studios to breathe new life into its older flat-screen games. Could you imagine how many people would jump at the chance to play the Killzone games in VR? Or how about the Resistance games? And they don't even have to be old games either. Need I remind you about how amazing Returnal is in VR with 6 DOF motion controls thanks to Praydog's UE VR mod? Because it is! I love the PSVR2 and I hope that it's around for long enough to reach its full potential. But that'll only happen if Sony cares about it as much as its fan base does. And really, does anyone out there believe that it does anymore? Because I'm not sure that I do. And that breaks my sad little VR-loving heart. But what do you lot think? Am I being melodramatic? Does Sony actually give a damn? Or has its apparent lack of support for the headset put you off buying one in the first place? Let us know in the comments below, and like this video and subscribe to Eurogamer if you enjoyed it. And then why not check out one of these other videos about PSVR2 that are on screen and clickable right now, while I just sit here and cradle my PSVR2 lovingly in my arms while I weep silently over what could have been. My beautiful PSVR2 headset. They did you so dirty. Why don't they love you like we do?